Hey friends, welcome back to the tavern. Today we are going to go through FAAB strategy, that is free agent auction budget strategy. We're not going to touch too much on what it is. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance you already know what it is and you're here to learn more. So if you are just about to hop into a FAAB settings league for the first time, this is a much-watched video. Or for a lot of you, you're very solid at fantasy football principles across the board, but you think that this is an area where you can add a few percentage points to your overall win rate because you know what you're doing, but you're not necessarily optimizing all of your strategy. Or maybe you really do know what you're doing, but you're hoping you can think of other people are thinking of areas that maybe you haven't thought of in as much nuance. Then this is for you. So let's hop into it. So first and foremost, what are we really trying to accomplish? What's the biggest upside play? And that is a league winner, right? You don't really win. There's an old adage, at least I believe in it, you don't win your league in your draft. You can lose your league in a draft, but you don't win. You win, especially redraft. You win your league through the waiver wire, through optimal FAAB strategy. And you can find actual league winners. Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, they won a lot of leagues, me included, last year. So that's why this video is important, all right? League winners are, well, they help you win leagues. That's why it's called that. The important thing is know the difference between a league winner and a really nice flex play for the rest of the season in terms of levels of upside, okay? When you're going after particular plays, it's important to understand what you're trying to accomplish, right? With a player like Puka, this was a player that when you went for him, I think most people thought you were going for a potential league winner, but he could also be irrelevant pretty quickly. But he fit the archetype. So all I'm going to harp on here is understand the difference, okay? Somebody gets an injury, they're going to come back from it relatively soon. You pick up that backup. That's not a league winner. That's a week-by-week winner. That's going to win you a week, maybe two. You got to win. Sometimes you got to buy wins to get yourself to the playoffs. That is good. It's not as good as outright winning your league in week 3, by picking somebody up. Nick Chubb was a league winner off the waiver wire. A lot of examples I could go through throughout history, but just know the difference, okay? Another reason you want to look into it is these are going to do a lot more for your team if you identify them early and go for them. Okay, if someone is putting up 15 plus points per game for you, weeks 3 on versus say post bye week, week 13 on, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck by identifying them early and having them on your roster, giving you meaningful points and winning weeks for you for multiple weeks. So the earlier you can find yourself, maybe not a league winner, but the earlier you can identify a very, very solid candidate off the waiver wire, it's better for you. So an old adage of wait, be responsible with your FAAB budget, that type of thing, that is a second place strategy if I ever heard one. Okay, there is a strategy for that where it's taking multiple value bets, but that we'll get into that a little bit later on. Point is, if there is an amazing league winner opportunity early, you should take it. There may not be another league winner the rest of the season. Sometimes there's just one Puka, and that's it. And if you miss your shot, someone else wins and you don't. That doesn't always happen, but when it does, you don't always see it coming around. And even if it does come around, the point is, if there's 2 league winners, somebody takes them in week 3 and the second league winner comes after week 12, one of them is significantly more influential. Also, it's a diminishing market. What happens is people take the best values and players off the waiver wire, but the fodder that gets put back into rotation just isn't worth it. So week after week, the cream of the crop, the unexpected value roll gets taken out. It doesn't go back in. Okay, the waiver wire weeks 2, 3, 4 is exponentially greater than what you're going to see weeks 13, 14, 15. It's different types too. Weeks 13, 14, 15, the roles are set. These are injury-based week winners, week fillers. They are not season-long assets, right? So you get more bang for your buck by winning FAAB bids early on. So much like if you've ever done an auction startup, sometimes getting your money in good when everyone else is a little bit of scared money, you can get premium value. So don't be scared. Okay. Now, there are two general strategies, which is going for the early chalky league winner play early, right? Or if your roster construction, we're about to get into that, is a little bit different, okay, there is the multiple value bets strategy. And there's room for kind of go all in, FAAB dump on one player, let's go, versus the value play. Different league settings are different for both, so let's hop into that. So roster construction is going to help you decide when to go big and dump early and when to take multiple shots per week, each week, and turn over your bench so that your bench is getting better and better week after week, or you're taking multiple shots on upside, and because you place so many cheap bets, you're able to maybe not accrue value, but you're going to bust a couple of times, but when you finally hit, it's worth it, right? So these are things that roster construction is going to help you to decide. Roster construction is going to help you decide when to wait until after bye weeks to make big plays, or if you can make them the whole time, right? Your particular roster construction, not league roster construction, but your post-draft roster construction is going to help you understand your bye weeks, your hell weeks where you have multiple players out, particularly when you have a quarterback tight end or a quarterback defense. Anytime you stack up two or, God forbid, more of your one-off positions in a single bye week, that is going to dramatically affect the week and the week before that week happens and how you can optimally play the waiver wire knowing that's to come. So let's look at all the examples here. So for deep benches, okay, so mostly speaking to redraft, dynasty, look, I'll just shout out to the dynasty crowd right now. For the most part, there isn't a lot of nuance to dynasty FAAB strategy. There really isn't. In my opinion, it's just as soon as you see kind of a striking value, go for it. Post-rookie draft, if you're in a particular setting where there was just some value to be had, go get it right away. And then don't fall to the week-to-week stuff. There's pockets of time in Dynasty where it's better to have more FAAB. But in general, FAAB's just not really... It's not league winning in Dynasty. Let me put it that way. The benches are too deep. The plays in the waiver wire are just in no way, shape, or form league winning almost ever. So I'm really speaking to redraft here when I talk about this. Deep benches lend themselves to placing more value bets consistently week over week. For instance, it's particularly good to take running backs a week or two early, and so we'll get into that in a minute, but particularly one of my favorite deep bench strategies is I am taking shots on a lot of interesting running back options, particularly backups and handcuffs. Deep benches lend themselves to general value versus team need, right? You can just take best available, try to do the best you can on the waiver wire from a FAAB standpoint. Try to take, we'll get into what tiers you should go after, but you can take a lot of tier 2 and 3 options or low-priced tier 1 options with low bids, catch your league mate sleeping. And even though you'll never start that person, this will happen at tight end or quarterback, there will be someone else in the league that needs that. And when you're constantly playing defense, constantly sweeping up the best value, teams that have a big need that week are going to outbid you. When you take the best play and hold them for a week and their need doesn't arise till the next week, when you already took the best play, now you've got trade value. You can buy yourself a good flex play in return for a team need they have that's on your bench that you don't actually need. It's a great way to accrue value, and you can turn that value into a lot of things. So moving on to shallow benches. you cannot afford to mess around with a bunch of shots. If you drafted well, you like your bench in a shallow bench league. And redraft for me, I've been leagues that have 5 bench spots. In a 1 QB, really old school, in my opinion, old school leagues. 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, defense, kicker if anyone still does that. But I'm a soccer player. I love kickers. No place for me in fantasy though. In 5 bench spots leagues, super super thin, and I would still consider 6 bench spots thin. I think 7 is starting to get in. 7 is deep, 6 is medium, 5 is thin. Right, so take it for what it is. Your league size, 10 versus 12 versus 14, has an effect too here, but you get the idea. Shallow benches. You can't mess around with multiple shots. If you draft well, and you should, if you watch my channel, you're definitely going to draft well. That is my one skill set that I definitely have, where I feel like I can play against any pro any day, and I can outdraft just about anybody given any position. It's one thing you should watch this channel for. But you can't mess around. If you drafted well, you're giving up a good player for another good player. And unless that player is definitely a league winner, it's not going to make a ton of sense, right? So you're going to lose almost as much value as you stand to gain. You can't mess around. Also, in shallow benches, it is extremely important to draft you'll know it when you see it week 1, if it's a thing or not, type of player. Their role is maybe ambiguous. It's an ambiguous backfield. It's an ambiguous wide receiver 2-3 situation. But you're drafting your week 1 drop. Your week 1, they're interesting on keeping them, versus your, you know what, it was an upside swing. It didn't happen. I already planned on this being there's other interesting or more interesting options, I should say, over this player. Okay? With shallow bench leagues, you got to remember, there's going to be hot shot waiver wire ads in week 1. Set yourself up to already have identified a player that you can drop if it's not there. Typically, you want that to be a high upside player, where if you're not picking up anybody week 1, it's because, my goodness, you've already won your league and your draft, and vice versa. You're good. If anything, you might be playing defense, if nothing else. Okay? With that one spot and liking the rest of your bench, it's better to take big swings when they present themselves and go all in. You can't you're never going to take 2 players, right? You pretty much, in a shallow bench, you have 1 bench spot, right? So with that 1 spot, what if you pick up kind of an interesting but not huge upside play? The week after and the week after, you might rotate that in and out, spending your FAAB, not gaining a ton, depending on the level of player you're going after. Because you can never go after 2. You can never win 2 bids when you're only swapping out 1 spot. Now, if you have a terrible bench and you're in a shallow league, well, I guess that levels itself out because you may have more than 1 spot. Shallow bench versus deep bench, the real key play here is how many free spots do you have in your bench, to an extent. We're going to get into that in a second. But in the same way that, trading multiple seconds for a first-round pick in Dynasty, right, you want consolidated value. That is how we're looking at this. We want consolidated value. So shallow benches, go for the league winner, go all in, but make it make sense. If it's just your take but no one else's take, be careful. There may be a chalky, everyone's going all in play. You may have to wait a week or 2 or 3, but then it happens. And when it happens, you spend 100% of your FAAB budget. You go get that league winner. You go get that Puka. You're in a shallow bench. You're not going to make a lot of changes later on in the year anyways. So go ahead and do it. Shallow benches, much more conducive towards FAAB dump, go all ins. Okay? With shallow benches, you need to plan ahead for future bye weeks. Okay? Find your nightmare week where you have the most buys. See what you're looking like. See how many weeks you have to plan ahead. Okay? If you have a situation where you have QB, tight end, defense, 2 of those 3 are going to be on your bench, and you're going to have to pick up a backup QB and a backup tight end, for instance, right? If you're in a 5-bench league, that's 40% of your bench now has starters on it, and I don't think you should draft a backup quarterback. If you're playing the waiver wire correctly, I think a stashed quarterback just doesn't have any value until you need them. where other players can have value all the time. So I'm not a big backup quarterback guy, especially right now that I feel like the quarterback position amongst like the top 14 to 16 quarterbacks is really deep. You shouldn't draft a backup. But when you have to pick up a backup and a backup tight end, right, you can't be messing around placing all these random bets on your bench because you're just going to drop them anyways. You're not dropping. If you have a great quarterback, you're not dropping your quarterback so you can pick up a backup. You're not doing it. You're not doing that with tight end either. Now, if you're streaming either position, this is a little bit different, right? Because then you're kind of ambiguous. But let's say you're not. This is a situation where that's why you can only go all in versus not have all those multiple bets. And you're just basically, the idea is you can waste your FAAB budget trying to play for upside, but you're not really playing for upside because you're not going for the big upside player with the big FAAB. And eventually you have to drop all of your little projects anyways, so you can get your backup quarterback and tight end. Okay, so let's say you do have a really bad week in week 10 or 11, multiple one-off positions plus a wide receiver, running back or two on bye, right? What you want to be doing here is you want to map it out so that you're set 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Okay, unless you're taking a big swing and you have no budget, set yourself up early. The idea is other people may have a drastic buy the week before you, put you in a rough spot. The earlier you can plan for it, the more value you're going to get the position. When you take the good quarterback as your backup 2 to 3 weeks in advance, no one else is taking them at that point because they might not have a need, right? Same with tight end. So plan weeks in advance. What can happen is also if it's your week creeps up on you, this is your nightmare week, all of a sudden you're unprepared for it, you're going to have to spend more FAAB on a worse player than you would early, overpaying for less talent. And you can just get boxed out, right? The best QB on waivers might be on bye, and you might be significantly down-tiering more than you had to if you planned in advance. And you might not be the only one. So when you actually do your bids, maybe the top 2 guys at each position of need for you, just you get outbid. You shouldn't let that happen. If you find yourself in a desperate spot, pay the price, do what you got to do. But it cascades in terms of things that can happen. Okay, so try to plan several weeks in advance. I recommend 2 to 3, just more than 1, okay? 2 to 3 is kind of optimal. I think 4 is a little overkill, but 2 to 3, if you can afford it, I highly recommend it. The amount of percentage of overall win points, the amount of time that you win your terrible nightmare bye week because you did this goes up drastically. Okay, so let's move on here. Know the big brands for waiver rankings, who's on the lists, and recommended FAAB spends. You should be checking anyway to help figure out who you should be going for, right? I mean, I would say there's not a fantasy football expert I know of that puts as much time, effort, and energy into it as I do, that doesn't watch all the other content, that doesn't see what their competitors are doing. It's good for you regardless. But it's also equally important, if not more important, to get a feel for the rest of your league, who they're going to be going after in their spend range. Right? For guys that you think are true league-winning plays, for the Pukas, right? The Kyron Williams. When your roster construction makes sense for a go-all-in play when it presents itself, if the recommended play across all the chalky, big brands that put out waiver shows, if they say you should go 90% of your budget, this is a true alpha, well, then you go 100%, right? Because your league's going to go with the recommended strategy or maybe a few percentage points above it, right? But for that amount of upside, 5-10% doesn't matter. Winning matters, right? Let's say it's a chalky play. Everyone's going to want it. It's a can't-miss situation. Maybe it's not super crazy elite for some reason, and like the recommendation across most of the professional platforms is like, 60 to 80%, something sub 90. Go ahead, lock it in. Go 95. Go 100. Shoot, go full 100. Just lock it in. It depends on your need, right? But let's say that no one's going to go 100 on a 60 to 75%. It's chalk, but it's not crazy upside. All right, well, leave yourself a little bit and just go like 86%, right? Beat all the guys who are looking to go top of market. They're going, 80, 85, and you're just at the top end of that, but you still end up with that chalky play, but you knew exactly what it took to win, right? Or you knew, hey, look, I don't think this is worth 75% of my FAAB. I think there's better ahead. I think my bench is shallow. I think unless this definitely hits, I'm not sure if it makes sense for me. I would rather win across multiple bye weeks, case by case. Then hey, this is going to be outside of your strategy. You're not getting them for 55% FAAB. So plan around something else that week. If everyone's going for the big bid, go for a tier 2 play that week, right? So, the second reason you got to know the big brands is if you're playing the multiple bet week after week, sort of accrue value strategy, taking multiple upside shots, is you'll be able to go after those tier 2 ranges, tier 3 ranges, and you won't be overspending for your range based on what the recommended bets are, right? This isn't like hard strategy. This is just over time, if you know what everyone else is looking at, right, be a level above, right? Know what everyone else is looking at. It's public information. We're all looking at it. Sure, some people spend more money than others in fantasy football, but for the most part, I want views and clicks, right? I'm probably going to do waiver shows myself, right? So check those out when we check them out, right? But most of these are free, so it's pretty much public knowledge. So a couple of my favorite places to check. Again, I'm not sponsored by literally anybody, but just so you know, some places that I like. The Fantasy Footballers have a great waiver segment. Fantasy Pros, always a staple. I particularly like Nick Zylak over at FFA, Fantasy Football Advice. He does a nice strategy. Me and him tend to think quite alike. Can't wait to meet him one day. And of course, the network that I support and a member of, the Get Right Fantasy Network. I'm sure we'll be doing several different written and video waiver shows, so definitely check us out as well. And honestly, I scour YouTube for like some lesser well-known shows. I'm an extremely unknown show at this point. Glad you're watching. But sometimes you will find not big syndicated shows have really nuanced advice and hot takes. Just because they're not a popular show doesn't mean they don't have a great take on something. Hope you think that about me one day, or maybe now. Moving on, we'll try to wrap this thing up here. Know your league mates' FAAB patterns. Okay, I'm not saying go the extra mile and make a quick spreadsheet where every week, if you're only in a couple leagues, here's who everyone bid on, here's how much they spent, and you can really get some crazy pattern recognition. For the record, for my highest buy-in leagues for redraft, I definitely do this. So if you want to know what true degens are about, yeah, we'll full spreadsheet warrior. I know that this person bid 26 and then another 26 on a tier 2 play, and when the first chalky play came around, they were in this range, right? And so I know when the next play comes around, I know exactly what I have to do to outbid their betting pattern. There's leveling wars there, but just so you know, that is what you could be up against in really true degenerate leagues with crazy competitors. But at a minimum, okay, right, go back, just get a feel for the general FAAB patterns of the most active guys and the overall winning bid amount. The one thing everyone's going to pay attention to in your leagues is the overall winning bid amount. So over the course of a few weeks in a row, you're going to get a sense for, 40 just doesn't cut it when it's talking about the number one waiver wire person of the week. Or, oh man, you can get away, as long as you bid every single week, you can get away with some lower bids, and sometimes people are just not about it. Get an idea of the winning number. Some people, if let's say you and a bunch of other people in the league are running back needy, there's a chalky running back up for the board, what's it going to take? You can look at the other lineups in the league to know who's really going to go after this player aggressively, or the ranges of them, and what do they previously bid? Some people are like, hey, I bid 20, 30, 40, right? They're very round numbers. An even greater amount of people are, multiples of 5, right? 25, 30, 35, 40. They can kind of give themselves a tier ranking for this player and say, hey, I think they're about worth, they're a little better than 40, so they're 45% UFAB, right? In addition, what I typically do is, because I think so many people are 5s and 0s, I'm betting that +1. I'm betting 21 or 22 or 46 or 47 to beat out the round number crowd. If everyone else in your league does that, it makes much more sense, to just add 5 to your bid, right? Because it'll put you into the next tier of like the 5 crowd plus. Or at a minimum, if everyone's going 46, 47 in your league, we'll end it with an 8 or a 9. You get the idea. This is just a simple way to help you not lose by $1 to $2 when you can just do a little extra homework. 2 more points. Running backs. Best FAAB strategy for running backs. Take bets on them a week or 2 early. Deep bench format only. You can't do this in shallow bench format, okay? The idea here is when light injuries happen, no time is missed. They're practicing right away, okay? People kind of fall off of that big case, right? No, you can't. The backup's going to score less than 3 fantasy points, so who wants him, right? Here's the thing. Chase the future narrative that can happen, okay? Chase it for cheaper while you can, especially where the upside could potentially be great if the narrative goes in your favor over the next 2 to 3 weeks, okay? So that injury in that game that they shrugged off could become a lingering injury that they have the next week and the next week, and this lingering injury can get worse, right? But once it's a lingering injury, the price of that backup's gone up, right? Everyone can see the narrative now, okay? God forbid that injury gets worse in practice, and all of a sudden a re-injury on Wednesday, Thursday. That's a nightmare scenario, right? Doesn't happen often, but you should definitely take the bet that, hey, you know what? They got injured on Sunday. By Tuesday, they seem to be perfectly fine. Still take the backup, because by the following Tuesday, another game playing on it, it's not so okay. Or, I was a former athlete. This happened more often than anything. It wasn't about re-injuring the injury you have right now. It's if you get an injury to one side of your body, you'll overcompensate or undercompensate to some degree, and you'll actually leave yourself open and more susceptible to a different injury, right? One injury can cause another, essentially. And, that's an opportunity there. So you might pick up a really nice handcuff because you saw a narrative, and you just got to let it play out for 2-3 weeks, right? When you can get ahead of it, it's cheaper, and oftentimes those have the biggest upside, right? When if this narrative plays out, it's just okay, you want to avoid those. You're looking for, you want to find, I'm trying to think of an example here, but, we'll just get into the next point. This is an offense thing. If this is a situation where an offense is doing amazing, where anyone with a role in that team is going to be a very big deal, if Isaiah Pacheco, right, if Christian McCaffrey even flexes a little bit of injury, right, I am reaching in redraft. I'm going straight to Garendo, right? I want to go for that high upside in a powerful offense play, and I'm willing to take multiple shots. I want 2 to 3 spots on my bench open for these sort of speculative plays that I can hold for multiple weeks until the narrative in and of itself pretty much just goes away entirely, right? Last point. Going into, actually finishing up running back here, okay? Be careful of 1 week fill-ins that are not talented enough to do anything, and will probably, at best, have a timeshare with, the RB3 at that point, okay? Are they worth a pickup? Are they probably worth some fantasy points? Most definitely, okay? Would in most cases, the fantasy footballers have taught me this strategy years ago when I didn't know what I was doing in fantasy, right? When the RB2 or the quote-unquote on paper RB2 is just so meh, just go get the cheaper RB3. Because most often, it's going to be a timeshare between the 2 backups anyway. And that might be when the team realizes that, oh, Mr. Backup is just 3.5 a carry and not great. But the guy that never got field time to begin with all of a sudden crushes it. He's going to leap the depth chart the rest of the year. right? So sometimes the RB3 is cheaper and a better play than the RB2. So watch out for chalk when the chalk is just not very talented. And lots of articles are going to be nuanced on this, so I don't need to go into depth about examples. You'll know it when you see it, but don't overspend for talentless RB2s and be fine taking the value and risk that comes with those RB3s, but the upside's worth the risk. Wide receivers, don't chase box scores, chase narratives. Okay, the role on the team, the role in the offense, and their snap share, okay, and the overall team offense ecosystem as a whole are more important than the box score. Okay, just because someone has a prolific week, right? If there isn't really a role to carve out to begin with, you just got to be careful. Guess what? The NFL is full of really, really talented players who on any given day should be able to have a great week. They really should. But because everyone's talented, if there just isn't a role for them to carve out and it was a little fluky, don't expect that to continue. This is wide receiver unique, right? I would rather have someone who was less prolific than another wide receiver that week, but you see a narrative where they can carve out a consistent, meaningful role, meaning the chances for future additional prolific weeks are significantly greater, and there'll be a better value for your team. So just be careful about box scores. Look into the narrative itself, okay? League winning upside almost never happens at the wide receiver position in mediocre or outright bad offenses. There's just not enough opportunity. They don't throw the ball enough. There's not a high enough touchdown rate. Those are teams where sometimes even like the wide receiver one just isn't highly drafted because the offense just isn't great. Or, maybe it's a team with a good defense and a bad offense, and it's just kind of a blasé situation. Just don't overbid for wide receivers in mediocre to bad situations. It's easy to see everyone on the team kind of sucks. They could carve out this amazing role. It's like, well, if the team is that talent starved, they probably would have recognized this a little bit early on. There would have been something going on. The chances that they hit a hot streak and there's just not enough offensive production to, at least quarterback talent, to get them the ball. It's just not there, right? You don't see Pukas popping up, Jonathan Mingo, maybe he was a waiver wire pickup when he had I think he had 7 catches one week. That offense was so anemic, he would have, you just got to look and say, look, that amount of targets is going to be rare. He's going to need a 40% target share when they're throwing the ball as little as they are. So just, take that with a grain of salt. What to look for outside of that is look for rookies who get dropped early in the season. They got drafted because they had some hype. Rookies don't hit the field early. They have low snap shares. They're learning the offense. They're an NFL rookie, so they're still learning a lot of things in general. Coaching staff is always going to value the veterans who they don't have to monitor. They're not going to have drastic issues early on. And rookies, especially rookie wide receivers, come into their own later into the season. Used to be year 2 breakout. Now we're looking at post-bye breakout. But very, very few rookies have an early season breakout unless they're not on the waiver wire at that point. If they're those rookies, the Marvs of the world, they're not going undrafted, right? We're looking for the Javon Bakers, the Jalen McMillans that probably won't get drafted. I'm probably going to draft them, but those are the ones you want to look at. Look at them early. Look at offensive opportunity. Look at, if they're going into a bye with some opportunity, that's when you want to pick them up because post-bye, sometimes the offense gets other people worked in. That's where you can pick up some nice value, especially if you can afford a multi-week stash. Last point we'll wrap here is know what you're looking for. Okay? Know if your team is looking for, we're really solid across the board. We need a massive upgrade. We are not in the market for a flex upgrade. I mean, who isn't looking for an upgrade? But realistically, we're looking for a big splash play to take our team from really solid across the board into a real contender. Okay, maybe you know that. Look, our wide receiver core is so great. It's going to take a truly heroic effort or a specific bye week fill-in to really make my starting roster. Even if someone puts up wide receiver 3 numbers, that's usually startable. But if you're solid at wide receiver, you're not looking for an emerging role player. At wide receiver, you would need a true breakout to even make your roster. So in that case, what you'd be looking for is you need to take those multiple shots on running back. So over the course of weeks, you're going to have, an opportunity to pick up, a weak winner, right? Or potential upgrade if you're weak at RB2 because you have all these amazing wide receivers and you went, fragile RB or hero RB where you're just cycling in an RB2 that has some sort of weekly floor, and you really are looking to upgrade that position to some degree, right? So know what you're looking for so you don't waste time being right and still it not mattering. Right? Hoping that, I drafted, I picked up this guy, spent a lot of FAAB on him. I don't need him, but I hope to trade him. There's no market for him because he's just not a difference maker. Right? So know what you're looking for. Know what your opponents are looking for too. This is where late in the season you can play defense. Go into the playoffs. You can, if you know your opponent's weakness is running back, you spend all your FAAB and whatever it takes to block them out of the best pickup that week, right? If you really want to know how to play FAAB to then trade, it's look at who in your league is absolutely going to FAAB dump for what. If there's not like, okay, these 2 to 3 names are all in contention, if it's just there is one standout, boom, quarterback, tight end specific, that's like, wow. Go play defense, look through your league, be like, wow, he faced an injury, he has no backup, this is his guy. Go grab his guy. He'll know it. And then you can trade him. You can give him a nice cheap deal where you're still definitely upgrading your team. He gets a net win because this is a position of need more than whatever flex play he's trading you, but your flex play that you got is going to be better than any waiver wire pickup you can. That is one way to accrue strategy, accrue value as well. So just to recap, I guess I have not even been scrolling here. You've just seen these 3. So we'll do a quick recap here. League winners, they do win leagues. Know them. Know the difference between a league winner and somebody else. Roster construction. Know the difference in strategies between deep benches and shallow benches, and plan for your bye weeks accordingly. Deep benches allow different strategies. Shallow benches take away options, so don't fall into the trap of playing strategies you shouldn't even be attempting in shallow benches. Know the big brands. Know who your league mates are going to be looking at, the websites they're going to be reading, the recommendations, the recommended FAAB. Use that to your advantage. Play with that knowledge. Learn your league mate FAAB patterns, learn the average price it takes for a league winner, and know the price of a decent FAAB pickup versus a league-winning FAAB pickup. Is your league a FAAB dump 100% dump, or is 55 a huge FAAB dump for your league, and you can get away with cheaper FAAB dumps? Running backs, got to be 1 to 2 weeks early, if not more. If you wait for the big injury to happen, you won't be able to afford it. Follow light injuries, that can become something else. This is a deep bench strategy only. Cautious about 1 week fill-ins. They might not even be worth it, and even if they are, the RB3 might be the better pickup. Be cautious, do your homework. If it's close, probably go to something else. Wide receivers, narratives and roles over box scores. Focus on good offenses that have actual upside. Focus on rookies in the early to mid-season who are dropped but will have massive potential later in the year after they get on the field at a higher snap share or to an injury, and know your needs and the needs of other teams in your league so you can play defense and also avoid picking up players that won't have an impact and will cost you FAAB that you might need for a dump later on. So this has been our FAAB strategy video. Sorry I haven't been scrolling down here. That is definitely my fault. I actually have a more in-depth show doc that I'm kind of reading off of that I typed by hand yesterday. Normally, most of what I say is completely off the cuff. I just give myself some bullet points so I don't waste your guys' time. They're all 100% my thoughts. But if you do want access to my spreadsheet, if you want me to send you one, I'm not big enough to protect my ideas, and I just want to help you get an edge in your league. So message me, drop a comment if you want me to share that with you, and I'll send something over to your DMs. If you have a video idea, I covered this because someone in a league that I'm in wanted to level up in the FAAB strategy. Drop me a comment. Let me know of a video topic that you want to hear about, that you think you can level up on. I am very much in the business of helping one person at a time. I will shamelessly do what it takes to earn that subscriber click from you. So let me know. I do have a bit of a plan for the next couple of videos I'm going to come out with. But if your entire league is really all about something and you want a video that's just made on it, let me know. I have a few people hitting me up right now for they want, in their Dynasty League, they want me to do a power rankings video where I look through the teams in their league and kind of talk about them, or a draft recap for your most recent rookie draft or Dynasty startup, things like that. Again, drop me a comment. It never hurts to ask. I won't say yes to everything, but if I have time, you can bet I am looking to make a name for myself in the community, and I'm going to do that one person, one awesome person at a time. So let me know. If you like the video, if you like what I'm about, or if you just want to support an up-and-comer who definitely could use the support, and you know at some point you might need that support back from the world, please do consider dropping a subscription and maybe liking the video. And let me know what I can be doing for you. I don't get a lot of comments yet, so if you drop something, I will absolutely answer it. We can hop into a discussion, maybe hop into a league together, who knows, or I'll add you to the list of people I message when I'm getting together a mock draft or a live stream. Thanks again. Huge shout out to the Get Right Fantasy Network. They're an affiliate network that I'm a part of. They are helping me quite a bit learn all the things that I don't know about producing content, so maybe I will actually be somewhat good at it at some point. They do live mock drafts every Monday and Friday. Please do check them out. I should have a link to all of our stuff that I do with them in the description. And anyways, it's been real. I'm out of words. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff. We'll hit it on the next video. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.